gentlemen, it's time for another round of Mind Your Puckin' Business with your host, Jeffrey Princeman.
Thank you, Dougie Sticks, coming to you from the beautiful studios of Undefeated Media here in Bergen County,
Oh,
New
thank
Jersey. You're welcome, because you own Bergen County.
Yes, sir.
Coming to you from the beautiful studios of Undefeated Media here in Bergen County, New Jersey. This is the Mind Your Puckin' Business podcast, brought to you, of course, by our good friends at the Bamboozle Project. This is episode number 106 on the Spanish dial. That is Ciento y Seis. Thank you for tuning in. On this lovely Tuesday morning, we're taping this episode, and everything is current as of Tuesday, February 21st. You can send us your questions at any time at mypbshow@gmail.com. You can also DM us on Instagram at Mind Your Puckin' Business at our page. And if you are a follower of the page, you will have seen that in the last, I would say, 3 or 4 weeks, traffic there has certainly picked up with comments and whatnot. We try to respond to everyone quickly. So if you have a comment, you have a concern, you can put it on one of the posts that are up. You can send us DMs, whatever you want. We will take care of it. Speaking of taking care of it, if you go to the Bamboozle Project, as I talked about a minute ago, you can save yourself a whopping 25% off just by using the 4 magic letters MYPB conveniently across your screen for those following on YouTube. MYPB saves you 25% off your entire order. You can listen to us on Spotify, iTunes, or, as I just said, you can also watch the video feed. And remember, we have Faces for Radio if you do watch the video feed, and that can be done on YouTube. So, and away we go. How are you, sir?
Away you go. I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I think we should start about an hour ago. I got here. Now, I got here today late by my standards. Usually I'm one of the first ones here. I rolled in. And I noticed that there has been a housekeeping change in a positive way at Undefeated Media.
Yeah.
Our old producer, B-Rock, is back in the building.
Yes, B-Rock is back.
Who conveniently decides,
yes,
no surprise, and I would have done the same if I was him, that I rolled in and he's wearing like this almost 1990s starter New Jersey Devil coat. So we welcome
the way
back.
He rolls.
It is the way B-Rock
rubbing
rolls.
it in your face.
We welcome B-Rock back to the show. And of course, he shows up on a year where the Devils are doing well. I don't know if he would he have showed up if it was like other years? We don't know.
Only when the Devils are good.
Right. He's here for life.
Back into the shadows.
He's here for life. So the New York Rangers, the last week I talked about it. It's one of like my least favorite weeks of the year when they're out in Western Canada, because when they're out in Western Canada, just the games are on so late. It's brutal. Well, on Wednesday night, they won in Vancouver. They didn't play great. They didn't play terrible. They did okay. Friday night, I decided with my wife that we were going to really make a conscious effort to stay up for the entire game. It was a Friday night. It was late, but whatever, we're going to do it. And the Rangers were down 4-1 after the first period, and they just look abysmal. They find a way to come back, win it in a shootout. Alexis Lafreniere, who's really had a good last week here, has done very well of late, finally. Scores the shootout winner. The following night, they end the Western Canada swing up in Calgary, and they are down 2-0 within 48 seconds of the game. I mean, you want to talk about an awful start.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot get a worse start than that. The second goal, and I don't want to get on him because we're not going to get on a Norris Trophy winning player, was just a horrendous turnover by Adam Fox in the defensive end. But nonetheless, the Rangers come back, they battle back, and they get a point, and they lose in overtime to the Calgary Flames. Last night, they come home. Now, there's been a thing. I don't know if I've ever said it here. Someone said this to me years ago, and it's true. I think statistically, if you look it up, it's true. When teams come back home and they play their first home game off of like a long road trip, and I say this about hockey. It may work. It may be true in basketball also, and football and baseball. It wouldn't be football. I don't know. However, in hockey, it's true. There's always like a kind of a flat start to the game, and the team's not showing up. The Rangers last night lose at home 4-1 to Winnipeg at home. Now, you can sit here and say, well, you just said that's probably what was going to happen. I don't know if last night the theory applied, because the Rangers peppered Connor Hellebuyck with shots. Connor Hellebuyck, the Winnipeg goalie, had 50 saves. The Rangers played well. I watched most of the game. I mean, I had a hockey game myself, so I missed the beginning of it. But they played well. I mean, sometimes you just got to tip your hat to an opposing player who has a really good night. And the only reason, if you're sitting here, and some Ranger fans, I saw this morning posted on social media in a couple places, are saying to themselves, oh my God, how does some guy named Connor Hellebuck have 50 saves against us? That's the Ranger way. No. Connor Hellebuck is not some no-name player. You don't know who Connor Hellebuck is because he plays in Winnipeg. He's been mentioned in Vezina conversations in previous years. He's a good goalie. He just played really well. It reminded me, and I always talk about this, and I'm too lazy to look it up, but in 1993-94, the last time the Rangers won the Stanley Cup, they had a game early in the season, I believe it was early in the year, against the Calgary Flames at home, and there was a goalie that came into Madison Square Garden. His last name was Trefilov. I want to say his first name was Andrei Trefilov. We should look it up. I don't know why I don't do that. And I believe he had 53 saves, and that would have been an example of, hey, here's a no-name goalie coming into Madison Square Garden, raised his game because he's playing on the lights of Broadway, and shuts him out. But that's not Connor Hellebuck. Connor Hellebuck's legit. So you know what? You take it, you move on. They played well. They now go back on the road again, even though they just came home for one. They go out to Detroit on Thursday, and then down to DC for their first away game with the Capitals this year, which is weird because we're already at the end of February, how that hasn't happened yet. They're down in Washington on Saturday afternoon and then back home at the Garden on the next day on Sunday versus the Kings. So 3 games in 4 nights. All right, let's take some stuff. What I like is this. We saw this in the Edmonton game. We saw this in the Calgary game. We've seen this year. This team has a really good ability to come from behind and fight back. They never think that they are out of games. Now, last night, if Connor Hellebuck isn't standing on his head, I think they probably would have come back. I mean, the guy had some crazy saves, particularly a glove save on Chris Kreider in the third period. Like, I don't even know if you just put your glove out and you knew it was coming in there or it just was total luck. But you like the fact that they're able to come back and they're playing, for the most part, a full 60 minutes of hockey. If you go back to November and December when they really struggled, and around here we had this whole panic button debate every week, one of the things that we were really constantly saying was they could not put together 60-minute game. They couldn't play a style that lasted 60 minutes. They would take a period off. Like, for example, the Devil games at home back in November and December. They started out so great. They went up 2-0 in both those games and then fell apart. They seem to be playing more of a complete 60-minute games. The marketing department at the New York Rangers, I believe they had it last year too. I don't think it was just this season. They have this whole thing, no quit in New York, no quit in NY, I should say. That is actually a very accurate statement for how the team is playing. They're not quitting. So you'll like to see that going forward as we approach playoff times, which is only 7 weeks away here, where things are really going to, escalate real quick around here, where they're being able to play 60 minutes. Now, where's the cause for concern? This past week has not been a good week for Igor Shesterkin. He did not play well in Vancouver. He certainly did not play well in Edmonton. He let up 4 in the first period, and he didn't play well last night at home versus Winnipeg. Are you concerned about him was a question we got. Now, Larry Brooks, who is a beat writer, and Larry Brooks, who writes for the Rangers, he's covered the Rangers for years with the New York Post, tweeted last night, I believe it was after the first period, that in the last, I want to say 6 games that Igor Shesterkin has played, his save percentage is under 900, which is not good, right? But I don't know if you're a Ranger fan, you're going to sit here right now and press the panic button, sound the alarm on Igor Shesterkin. I think, you know what? Players are allowed to have a bad couple weeks. For me, I don't need Igor Shesterkin to be great right now in February. I need him to be great in April and May.
Yeah.
And so thank you. I appreciate that. So whatever the concern is, or maybe it's a mechanical thing, maybe it's some adjustments he needs to make, I'd rather this be happening now.
Absolutely.
Than 7 weeks from now. So am I concerned about Igor? Was a question I saw this morning when I went on our Instagram page. No, I am not. However, you would like to see him recover sooner than later. If this is still an issue 2 or 3 weeks from now, and this is something you and I need to talk about, Igor Shesterkin, then maybe it is the sort of thing that is a problem. But right now, I'm not going to throw a lot of shade on it. Okay?
Agreed.
You're cool with that?
Yeah.
Okay. On Sunday, 2 days ago, the New York Rangers remained active in the trade deadline, and they traded for Tyler Mott from Ottawa. Now, you're saying to yourself, if you listen to the show, Tyler Mott, why have I heard that named before.
Mhm.
Tyler Mott was on the Rangers last year. He was acquired at the trade deadline. I believe, if I remember correctly, he came from Vancouver last year when he came. And in the offseason, we did it. Now, we don't tape a lot in the summer,
Mhm.
or we don't tape as much in the summer, I should say, because there's not football, there's not hockey, and they don't want to hear us talk about our love for TS Mott Chinese food in Wyckoff. So we don't tape a lot. But one of the shows that we were on, we talked about, the Rangers had a little bit of cap room left. What could they do? And I campaigned for them to re-sign Tyler Mott. I thought it would have been a good re-signing. He played well here last year. He was a great penalty killer, good fourth-line guy. But they decided at the time to not re-sign Tyler Mott. He went up to Ottawa. So over the weekend, they trade Julien Gauthier. And I always pronounce his name wrong. I don't know if it's Gauthier. Sometimes I'll say Gauthier. I don't know. But we'll go Gauthier today. They trade Julien Gauthier up to Ottawa in exchange for Tyler Mott. And they also sent a conditional, I believe it was 7th-round pick. To me, and I was talking to B-Rock about this before the show, a lot of Ranger fans are sitting there saying, oh, my God, Chris Drury with the fleece. Chris Drury fleeced Ottawa. Relax with the fleece talk, all right? It's a good trade. But I think if I'm going to use the fleece trade me Jack Hughes for Julien Gauthier, and then let some fleece. This is not a fleece deal. You can't fleece someone about it. But you like this trade for a couple of reasons. One, Mott is very familiar with Gallant's system. Gallant even said on Sunday night when they got off the plane from Calgary, or on Sunday, that he loves Mott because he knows the system. And Mott even said, look, I loved it here. I wanted to come back here. There's a mutual kind of affection for each other, which you like. There is a place for him on this team right now. There is a place for him in the sense that, this is a positional need, a fourth-line guy. If you told me right now the Rangers need to go out and get a first-line right wing at the trade deadline, I'd look at you like you're nuts. But this is a positional need. Now, there were some people on our Instagram page yesterday in the comments that got really upset about Julien Gauthier leaving here. Like he was, the second coming of whatever. Julien Gauthier did not get a fair chance here. I will agree with people on that. He never played consistently and all that. However, I don't know that you can sit here and tell me that for sure you're giving up someone who's going to go somewhere else, in this case, Ottawa, and become a star. I don't really think that's the case. So I think you're happy with the deal. And remember also when we saw this last year with Tyler Mott, players like him matter in the playoffs, right? They matter in the regular season, of course, as well. But really when you're in a 7-game series with Carolina, or if you have to go up against Boston, who can be physical, or Tampa, as we saw, or even a team that like Toronto that plays a speed game, Tyler Mott matters. He makes a difference. And to get him for Julien Gauthier, who is not really going to be in the lineup consistently here, that's a good deal. Again, I'd relax on the fleece talk. Like, I think it's a little dramatic, but I like the deal. Why don't we bring in the comment? And that is, that comes in from Chris, and that is, who told Jeff the trade was going to go down on Sunday morning? So this is some great reporting here by this listener. On Sunday morning, true story, and I should have actually screenshotted it so we could have put it up on the screen. Chris had sent me a message saying, don't be surprised if the Rangers end up with Tyler Mott today. Now, what was interesting about it is it was not reported anywhere. It's not like I didn't see it anywhere. And a couple hours later, there it was, Tyler Mott traded to the Rangers. So super reporting there from Chris, who I sometimes believe is in the front office of the Rangers. And what happened on Sunday would only back up my case. So the Rangers, again, I think now for the most part, and we're going to talk with our guest here in a minute, are done with the trading deadline. And if they're going to add anything else, and maybe there's one more piece they want to do, it's not going to be something overly crazy over the top. All right. So let's see if we can bring in, let's see if he's ready. I see him in the waiting room. It looks like he's ready. We're going to bring in Johnny Lazarus. This is one of our favorite guys. How are you, Johnny?
What's up, Jeff? How you doing?
I am good. I don't even know anymore how to intro you. Like, it used to be like, he's on this podcast, but now I feel like you do like a million things. I saw you were doing the UMass BC game over the weekend. What is the proper way to introduce you?
Honestly, I don't even know anymore either. I got my toes dipped in a lot of different pools, but just
okay.
My name, Johnny Lazarus, I guess is good enough at this point.
We'll call you the great Johnny Lazarus. Around here in these studios, you're known as the great Johnny Lazarus.
That's too
All
kind.
right. That is, well, but you know what? Deservingly so. All right, let's go back a week. Let's pretend you were here last week, which you were not, and let's discuss the Tarasenko trade with you. I don't know how anyone could have any real negative feelings on that trade, what they gave up, what they got. I didn't really see it. Would you be in agreement with the masses that it was a good deal for the Rangers?
Yeah, I mean, we didn't really give up anything. And that's something that I, felt pretty strongly against before the trade happened. I was like, thinking is Tarasenko really the answer for this team, depending on what we have to give up. But sawing what we gave up, I mean, I looked at that roster that day and I was like, this team they have to win the Stanley Cup. Like when you look at the top 9 forwards right now, it's a joke. Like the Rangers are so like by far, and I know I wasn't born in '94, and a lot of people have let me know that on Twitter. Because I've been saying this is the top to bottom, the most skilled Rangers team I've seen in my lifetime. And I was born in 1996, so just take that into account. I don't really remember the '97 team, but like when you think about having a number 1 overall draft pick in Lafreniere, number 2 overall draft pick in Kakko, Artemi Panarin, who's somewhat of a Hart candidate almost every season, Vladimir Tarasenko won a Stanley Cup. I think is a 30-plus goal scorer pretty much each season for the most part. Chris Kreider scores 50 last year. Mika Zibanejad, a top 10 center in the league. Igor Shesterkin, a Vezina Trophy winner. Adam Fox, a Norris Trophy winner. Keandre Miller, a phenomenal up-and-coming defenseman. Jacob Trouba, another pretty strong defense. Like this team from top to bottom is just stacked. Like Filipino now, becoming a 20-goal scorer. There aren't many holes in this roster that are an issue. So for me, after that Tarasenko deal went down, I look at this team and I'm just like in awe of what they can accomplish.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think it's very hard to say anything negative about it. Can we put up that we have a nickname someone just came in for you, and I think it's pretty good. I think that's what we'll refer to you around here, and that is Johnny on the Spot Lazarus. I like that. Johnny on the Spot Lazarus. Take it.
No H in my name, but I'll take it.
We'll take it. We'll leave the H out, but we'll leave. We'll go with that. All right. Some negative news last week with the Rangers. Another trade request for Vitaly Kratsov. We had a discussion yesterday on one of our clips on Instagram. I was discussing with someone, and it was a hard question to answer, so I want your opinion on it. On what is really a realistic return for Vitaly Kratsov? Just to go back a step here, he came here 9th pick overall in the 2019 draft. At the time, some people had claimed he was the top prospect outside of North America. We know now you're not going to get a return based on that. What it was, but where we are today in February of 2023, if Chris Drury is on the phone trying to, grant him his wish and get him out of here, what is a realistic return for Vitaly Kratsov?
I'd have to think it's something similar to Nils Lundqvist, right? It's a similar scenario. A guy who's been in and out of the lineup, has had a little bit of, chances, but not necessarily been a consistent every night player. So I'd think like a 3rd round pick, maybe 2nd round pick at best for Kratsov. But if you want to go for a guy like Tanner Jeannot, who the Rangers seem to be targeting, like that could be a deal maybe for Nashville where they take a skill guy like Kratsov. I'm not a huge armchair GM person or whatever you call it. I don't really know the contracts and stuff like that. That's never been something I'm necessarily an expert in, but I'd have to think it'd be a 2nd or 3rd round pick or maybe, a 3rd, 4th line kind of guy.
Has Kratsov now played him? I mean, is there a way he puts on the jersey again and plays again? Or is it now, this is your 2nd time going through this. The guys in the locker room know this. They probably don't really want you here. You think he ever plays again for the Rangers?
I don't see why he would. The only way I think he would get in the lineup if he's still here is if the Rangers clinch a playoff spot and they want to rest some guys before the playoffs. Like that's the only scenario I see that happening. But in reality, where does he fit right now? The first line is essentially, last night I know VZ was with Mika and Kreider, and I thought VZ was phenomenal last night. He was flying. Second line is Trocheck, Tarasenko, and Panarin. Kratsov's not playing on that line. And then the kid line obviously has been intact, and they should be intact for the rest of the season. So, if he's not playing the top 9, he shouldn't be playing 4 or 5 minutes. So, you don't want to put a guy in a position that sets him up to fail. So that's why he's not playing. Kratsov could easily be on the 4th line, but it just doesn't do anything, beneficial for him to have him on that line.
Is there any concern before you came into the waiting room? We were talking about, right? I don't think you were here. We were talking about Shesterkin has not had a good last 7 to 10 days. Any concern for him long term, or you're confident he's going to work it out?
I'm not concerned at all. I thought last night in the beginning of the game he was okay. A couple of those goals were on odd man rushes where you can't really blame the goalie for it. The first goal is a power play. Second goal, Kyle Connor on a 3-on-2 or 2-on-1, and it takes a funny bounce off of Trouba, I think. The 3rd goal was a snipe from Kyle Connor in the slot. Kyle Connor's an elite goal scorer in the NHL. That's a pretty high scoring or high danger chance. 8 out of 10 times Kyle Connor's going to score from that angle. The only goal that was questionable was the 4th one. But in the 3rd period, Igor barely even saw any shots. Igor is a goalie where if he's getting peppered, he's at his best. The Rangers dominated the entire game. He wasn't really seeing a ton of action. Anybody would kind of fall asleep in the blue paint, I think, But, the story last night is you can't win a hockey game if you score 1 goal on 51 shots.
Yeah, and I was saying before you came on as well, like people are this morning on social media, how do you get, how does that happen with some guy named Connor Hellebuck? That guy's no bum. I mean, he plays in Winnipeg, so he doesn't get the acclaim is playing in a major market, but he's been in Vezina talks in the, previous years here. I mean, he's not
He's also won one.
Yeah, he's not a bad guy. So it happens. All right. So the trade deadline is rapidly approaching in about 10 days. If you're Chris Drury, you've gone out and you've gotten Tarasenko, you've gotten Tyler Mott back. Are you of the camp right now that you're done, or is he going to be active? And if he is, what do you think he's looking for?
I think right now what seems to be the hole, I guess, or like the one weakness maybe in the lineup is that fourth line center. Jake Lecision, he's come in and he's kind of just been whatever. I think if they can afford a fourth line center, why not get a guy who's, been established in the NHL, has some experience, some playoff games under his belt, and maybe just, a leader in the locker room, have another voice in the locker room, because obviously, I don't want to harp on it too much, but losing a guy like Ryan Reeves is like another big, powerful voice in the locker room. And that's, pretty important for a playoff run. And obviously, all the Ranger fans know the spark that he brought to the locker room. So maybe a guy like that, a rah-rah kind of guy who, will stick up for his teammates come playoff time, because, I do look at the Rangers still, and I don't see them as necessarily a hard team to play against. They're not necessarily an in-your-face kind of team. They have a ton of skill and they can outskill anyone. But to beat a team like Boston and to beat a team like Carolina come playoff time, you need a little bit of that extra grittiness, which they're not necessarily lacking, but they could definitely use a little bit more.
So speaking of Boston, because that was my next question for you, we were talking here in the studio before we went live. Yeah, obviously the year they've had Jim Montgomery, great story, comeback coach, what he went through in Dallas. They just cannot seem in previous years to win in the playoffs. Is this year going to be different up there, or is this just the same script with the same players that are going to be out, early in April?
I don't know. I wouldn't say they can't win in the playoffs. They've been to, 2 cup finals in the last 7-8 years. But I think to that point, what we've seen in recent history is the President's Trophy winners not necessarily having success in the playoffs. You think about that Tampa team in 2018-19 that had 62 wins. They go into the first round in Columbus and get swept. Those Vancouver teams that won the President's Trophy, the Capitals teams that won the President's Trophy, the Rangers that won the President's Trophy. For whatever reason, the teams that have all that success in the regular season and don't necessarily face adversity can't find a way to get it done in the playoffs. But, this veteran group for Boston has definitely faced a ton of adversity in their career. So they do have that experience under their belt, but a guy like Linus Ullmark hasn't necessarily faced that yet. So it is interesting to see how Ullmark does perform in the playoffs, and Swayman got a couple games in the last couple seasons in the playoffs as well. I know he played, in that Islander series 2 years ago, a couple games. For me, I think Boston, well, any team in the Eastern Conference right now, the East is going to be a dogfight. I'm so excited. This is the most excited I've been, I think, for the playoffs in, I don't know how long. Last year, I think by Thanksgiving, the top 8 teams were basically solidified for the playoffs. This year, I still think Buffalo is going to find a way to sneak in. I think Pittsburgh and Washington aren't going to make it. They're not in the playoffs right now as we're talking, and I think it'll stay that way just because Washington has been, a little injury prone this year. Pittsburgh, Tristan Jarry's had a couple injuries as well. But Florida has been looking good. The Islanders had a big win last night. Buffalo creeping up with some games in hand. Boston doesn't have an easy road to the final, that's for sure.
Well, why don't we put up Chris's comment, the last one, because someone just wrote in exactly what you're saying, and that is the East is a gauntlet. The West wins the Cup this year. I mean, whoever comes out of the East is going to be so beaten up by the time they get to the Cup final. The East is crazy. Another trade deadline question that just came in, I will put the other question up, and that is, speaking of the deadline, where does Timo Meier land? Obviously, the Devils seem to be one of the destinations we hear about. At the end of the day, where do you think Mike Greer in San Jose sends Timo Meier?
So I don't know why, but I have this gut feeling that Meier might end up in Detroit just because the Red Wings have the money available to get him. Obviously the Devils would be a great destination for him. They're going to be a playoff team this year. But listen, this is no information. No one's telling me anything. This is just gut feeling. There's a part of me that thinks the Devils go for Kane instead of Meier. Patrick Kane, I think fits that style a little bit more to the Devils. Plus, Jack Hughes grew up a huge Patrick Kane fan. Patrick Kane can come in and, be somewhat of a mentor for Hughes as we go along in Jack Hughes' career. I think Kane, why would he not want to play for the Devils? They're a young, fast, skilled team. I think he fits that mold a little. Like, Meyer obviously has a ton of skill as well, but I think Meyer could be a more beneficial player on a team like Detroit, who's still in the hunt for the playoffs as well, right? Like, 2 weeks ago, the Red Wings might have been sellers during the deadline, but they're still trying to re-sign Larkin. And, if they bring in a guy like Meyer, that gives Larkin a little more leeway to sign with the Red Wings too. That shows that they're going to go for it. And Steve Yzerman isn't the kind of GM that's going to mail it in, come deadline time. So I think the Red Wings might be a secret team in the hunt for Meyer right now.
Okay. All right. Before we let you go, you're known as Johnny on the spot now, and now I'm going to put you on the spot. On Sunday, Sunday, 3:19 p.m., a tweet from you came out the other day that said, "This is probably the second time in my lifetime," and you clarified that you're born in 1996. This is the second time in my lifetime that am truly confident that the New York Rangers can win the Stanley Cup. So, do you feel now in 2023, let's go recent times, are you more confident this year than you were a year ago at this point in 2022?
By far. Last year, like, I wasn't even upset last year when they lost to Tampa because it was not in the cards last year. Like, honestly, I thought it was a blessing in disguise because if they went and played Colorado in the Cup final, I think they would have gotten destroyed. I think the Avalanche would have won that series in 4 games, and it would have been horrible for this team's confidence coming to this season. So to take Tampa to 6 and to know you're 1 goal away from maybe forcing a game 7, I think that gives them so much more of like a confidence or just a good overall vibe coming into the season than it would if they had gotten to the final and gotten destroyed. Like, that Colorado team they were built different last year. And speaking of the East Coast being a bloodbath and a gauntlet, like, Colorado's path to the Cup final last year was not very difficult. They swept the first round against the Preds. They had a pretty tough series against the Blues in the second round. They won game 6 with like 5 seconds left on the road, and then they sweep the Oilers in the conference final. So, they lost like 2 games before the Stanley Cup final. I think it was pretty obvious they were going to win the Cup last year unless something crazy happened. But, also you got to think about the Rangers' luck last year. I know we've talked about this on the show before, but the Rangers face Louis Domingue round 1, Antti Ranta and Peter Kochetkov in round 2. They got a little lucky in those 2 rounds. They didn't even have a series lead in either round either. So I just don't think last year was necessarily in the cards. And, I alluded to that 2014-2015 team when they brought in Keith Yandel, brought in Marty St. Louis. I didn't think in 2014 they really, had the edge against LA or against Chicago. Those 2 teams obviously were somewhat dynasties in that time. But I think that 2015 team underachieved. They won the President's Trophy. They had a chance to take a 3-2 lead against Tampa on home ice, get shut out again in game 7 in the conference final. I think that team really was incredible, but on paper, I think this is the best team the Rangers have had in my lifetime as far as skill.
So that being said, before we let you go, with what you said, it's Cup or bust, right? Now, the expectation is, right, there is no either you're going to win the Stanley Cup, or if you don't, you've fallen short of what you could have done. Is that right? Especially
when you go for a guy like Tarasenko and you don't know what his future is going to be with the team, I think it's got to be Cup or bust.
Okay. That is Johnny Lazarus. We thank you as always, Johnny, on the spot around here. We'll have you back, I'm sure, sometime in March before we kick into high gear in the playoffs. Thanks, Johnny.
Thanks, Jeff. Appreciate it, guys.
You got it. Good stuff, Dougie Sticks.
Absolutely. Always good to have Johnny.
Johnny knows his stuff. What I like about Johnny, among many things, is he knows his stuff around the league. A lot of times, myself included, we seem to be really in the know of the Rangers, and then we kind of go to some other areas of the league, and we don't know as much. Johnny's like spot on. Like,
there you go.
All right, so we do not, for the first time, and I talked about this last week, there is a depression that sinks into the United States of America the first Sunday after Super Bowl, when you realize that you do not have any football that day, right?
True.
I mean, it's tough. You've gone from having football really every Sunday for the past 20, when preseason started, to having nothing. But thankfully, living in the New York area, there's still football to talk about because the New York Jets are trying to make a decision here on what quarterback they want to do.
Mhm.
Now, unfortunately for you, as the world's #1 Sam Darnold fan, he is not in the mix. I
well.
tried to find someone reporting for you that maybe the Jets would contact Carolina and go back to Sam Darnold. Shockingly, nobody's reporting that. So I tried.
Oh well.
I want you to know.
Sam Donald's good. It's just I felt like they just treated that situation poorly.
Okay.
Like they treated the Eli Manning situation poorly.
Got it. Okay. So if you are the New York Jets,
Yes.
it appears
Yes.
where we are as of today,
Yes.
that there are two names that
Mhm.
they are between
Mm-hmm.
for their quarterback position to start on opening day
Mhm.
2023. Both names you are familiar with,
Yeah.
one being Aaron Rodgers and the other being Derek Carr. Now, we also put up a clip about a month ago that Lamar Jackson should be a Jet. It doesn't seem likely that
Mhm.
that's going to be the destination.
Mm-hmm.
If it ends up being it, I don't think any Jet fans would be upset.
Mm-hmm.
But for where we stand today, it
Yes.
seems like it's Aaron Rodgers versus Derek Carr.
Mhm.
Now, the Jets, shockingly,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you know this, have the 6th best Super Bowl odds to win the Super Bowl next year in Vegas.
Well, wait.
Because Vegas is
Place my
sitting there.
bets now.
Well, you should. Vegas is sitting there saying
Yeah.
that the complement of players other than the quarterback position are pretty darn good,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So maybe the quarterback can step in and play with Breece Hall, running back, who hopefully comes back from his ACL injury.
Mm-hmm.
Garrett Wilson is obviously an elite, or can be an elite receiver in the league. You have Corey Davis, Elijah Moore. On the defensive end, you have Sauce Gardner.
Mm-hmm.
So the Jets have a decent team. What they don't have is a quarterback.
Yes.
So
Mm-hmm.
how do we try to pick here? Who's the better fit, Aaron Rodgers or Derek Carr? Now, before I ask your opinion,
Yeah.
I want to give you all the stuff to
Give me
decide.
all this stuff.
Okay. The Jets made a move
Yes.
a month ago that kind of went under the radar
Yes.
that I think tipped their hand a little bit as to what they wanted to be the preference.
Mm-hmm.
And that was they went out and they fired Denver head coach Nathaniel Hackett, who didn't
Mhm.
even last a year out there,
Mm-hmm.
as their offensive coordinator, because Nathaniel Hackett's background, where he had success, was as an offensive coordinator.
Mm-hmm.
Where was he an offensive coordinator? Do you know?
Green Bay when they
Green-
won the Super Bowl.
Well, I don't know if he was there when they won the Super Bowl, but he very well may have been. That I can't tell you for sure.
Okay.
But he was the offensive coordinator there when Aaron Rodgers shined the last few
Mhm.
years. And supposedly he has a very good relationship with Aaron Rodgers. So to me, my thought is, well, Aaron Rodgers is the answer the Jets want, right? But then I think to myself this, if they're going to get Aaron Rodgers,
Mm-hmm.
they've got to trade for him, right? And I don't know, you want to give up stuff, right?
Yeah.
You'd rather not, of course.
Mhm.
Or if I want to get Derek Carr, and supposedly Derek Carr, who had an interview with the Jets either yesterday or Sunday in the last few days, and the report was that it was extraordinarily positive. If you want to get Derek Carr,
Mm-hmm.
you can just sign him. So you can
True. You don't have
trade
to
for,
give up anything.
you can trade for Aaron Rodgers,
Mhm.
or you can sign Derek Carr. What are you doing?
Well, unfortunately, I think they're going to blow both of these opportunities because they're going to wait for Aaron Rodgers to come off his nature walk blackout camping trip. And then while they're doing that, waiting for him and his answers, Derek Carr is going to get a little frustrated because he doesn't want to play second fiddle to nobody, and he's going to wind up signing with the Saints. You heard it here first.
I think if I'm the Jets, and this may be an unpopular opinion.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know. This maybe I'm going off of my gut here.
Mhm.
But if I was picking between trading for Aaron Rodgers or signing Derek Carr, knowing where the team is, for some reason,
Mhm.
my gut is telling me to sign Derek Carr.
Yeah,
I
100%.
we have talked here over the last two or 3 years. You and I have done this podcast that there's something about Aaron Rodgers that just annoys me. The way he acts with the media, the way he doesn't speak. Like I don't like the whole shtick.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it would be even magnified in the New York market where he's expected to win. Like he's not coming here to not win.
Mm-hmm.
I call me crazy, but I just think Derek Carr is the better fit than Aaron Rodgers.
And I don't think he would. I don't think Aaron Rodgers would mesh well with the Jet fan base. Like,
No.
you know what I mean?
Oh, God,
They're
no.
blue collar, like
No.
hard worker, and he's like, the Green Bay, different kind of fan.
Totally different kind of fan. And to your point, which is a good one, I think Derek Carr would mesh well with that kind of blue collar, tough guy fan base.
I mean, it was exactly what he was with the Raiders. Like, you know what I mean? All the Raiders fans loved him and continue to, and they're sad he's gone. And I think that would mesh well with the Jets fan
I
base.
wouldn't be upset if the Jets traded for Aaron Rodgers. I think you still would be excited, and I think you'd have a good chance to win, which is really what it's all about.
Mhm.
However, if I'm given the chance of the two right now, trading
Yeah.
for Rodgers or signing Carr, and where the team is, I think you bring up a really good point I didn't even think about, which is like personality and how they kind of fit with the fan bases and the team. I'm taking Derek Carr,
Yeah.
which I'm not sure I'm going to be
Who's
right on.
younger,
exactly.
and you know, has an arm and has better legs probably.
Yeah. And if you look at a guy and you hope as a Jet fan that Garrett Wilson is who you think he can be, and he kind of showed you in the first year that he probably can be, give him a younger guy with Derek Arm throwing deep passes.
Yeah.
I mean, that's exciting. And then on the other side of the ball, obviously he's got Sauce Gardner trying to lock down the other team's version of Garrett Wilson.
I just foresee, like, you can, like, if you look at the future, like you could see Derek Carr like getting down and dirty with the team, and you can foresee Aaron Rodgers complaining like, you missed your block and what the hell, and this team.
But that's
trade me back to Green Bay.
Yeah. I hope the Jets make the right move here. And again, I don't know what it is. I mean, my thought is it would be Derek Carr. I could be wrong, but I hope that whatever the right move is, the Jets make it. Because if you're a Jet fan right now, again, Vegas is basically telling you that we're expecting you to add the right quarterback. And if you do, because of everything else on your roster, you've got a great chance to win the Super Bowl. And the AFC East now, right? You've got Buffalo, you know, with Josh Allen up there. And I'm not buying into the hype that their window is closed either. With Josh Allen, you've got Tua in Miami. You can never discount the Patriots with Belichick as much as I would love to. You can't do that. The AFC East could be great, which would be awesome, right? Because then you have all these 6 divisional games that you're going to have throughout the course of the 2023 season would be just all phenomenal games. And hopefully the schedule makers get it right and do a lot of primetime games as well.
Sure.
So we'll have to monitor who the Jets do, what the Jets do here. It sounds, again, I don't know what you want to believe of what's out there, but it sounds like Derek Carr's meeting went as well as it could go with the team. I don't know.
Zach Wilson.
Well, there is no scenario where Zach, you can't sell to your fan base next year, because you know they try to sell me tickets every year. We've talked about this off the air, that you could not sell to your fan base, come buy season tickets, and the quarterback under center is Zach Wilson. So I don't think that is a option. But if you were a Jets season ticket executive in Florham Park, where the Jets front offices are, and you're making phone calls, right, trying to sell people on season tickets, and you say, you know what, here's who's on the team, and we have Derek Carr and we have or Aaron Rodgers, that's a much easier sell. And you know owners think about these kinds of things when they're making decisions, right? So
absolutely.
We shall see. Anything else on your end? How's the baby?
Baby's good, but before we go, you can't just close the NFL door without talking about the Giants as well. Daniel Jones and Saquon Barkley.
Yes. So Daniel Jones.
A little dilemma we have here.
Oh, yeah. We talked about it. Daniel Jones seems to be asking for a lot more money than I think.
Rumor has it. And he fired his agent.
Well, yeah. Well, that is not a rumor. He did fire his agent, which shows you, as you said before we went live, that the negotiations are clearly not going to his liking. And now, coincidentally, with the negotiations not going to his liking, he's asking for more money. I don't know here what the Giants do. I don't really know what options they have. They're not going to go out and do the Aaron Rodgers, right? I don't really think Derek Carr fits that fit at all. I'm not sure. I think, but at some point, it's not like Daniel Jones has a blank checkbook either and can have you pay whatever you want.
So, like, I mean, he has the most rushing yards of any quarterback. I'm just playing devil's advocate. He's got, like, what could he be possibly be saying, like, to get his money, right? He had more rushing yards than any quarterback. Won a bunch of games with no wide receivers. The problem is, like, if you do pay him what he thinks he's owed, you don't have any money left over to get him a wide receiver. So herein lies the problem.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm not really sure here what they do. I got from one of the articles I read,
Mm-hmm.
and again, you don't know what's true or not, which makes this hard. But one of the articles I read was that the Giants front office, so Joe Shine, the GM there, were taken aback by what he was asking for, right? So, which would make sense, but you would like to think that the front office has a plan B to say, if he's not going to come back here, what are we going to do in return? And I don't know what that answer is.
Who is the highest paid quarterback in last year? Do we know?
That I do not
Aaron
know.
I mean, is this, I don't know if these are true. Aaron Rodgers, 59 million. Deshaun Watson, 46. Patrick Mahomes, 40. Kyler Murray, 39. Dak Prescott, 31.
I'll tell you, Mahomes is going to get paid in his next contract, right? He just won a second
Yeah.
Super Bowl, and he's paid $20 million less than the top quarterback.
Mhm.
When he's up for his contract extension, he's going to get paid.
Now, this list says Kirk Cousins on the top of the list.
That's Paul Farrington paying him, by the way.
All right. So he did better than Matthew Stafford. Matthew Stafford is 27 million. He was probably had a Josh Allen type season. Josh Allen got 28 million. Russell Wilson, 28.
The other name that I'm hearing that with the Jets that I've seen in a couple places, which I kind of I don't know that I like it as much, but I guess you'd be okay with, and that's Jimmy Garoppolo. Because he's got his time in San Francisco, right? Because now you've had the whole Purdy situation. You still have Trey Lance there. I mean, Garoppolo's not in the cards there, so he's got to go somewhere. The QB carousel merry-go-round in the offseason will make it very interesting around here for sure. That is it for us today. We appreciate you tuning in and listening. And as always, we appreciate Johnny Lazarus coming on and talking with us. Ranger hockey, some stuff around the league as well as the trade deadline, which is coming up in a week and a half. So a lot going on with that. We will be back with you next week. Anything else? Check out the Bamboozle Project as always, thebamboozleproject.com. Check them out. On the left-hand side of the menu option there is a way you can just see MYPB gear. You can get in line for your summer gear early on.
Summer gear.
The water bottle on there is pretty cool. We pump up the winter hat a lot in the winter. We should be pumping up the water bottle because that is a cool bottle that is up there. And use promo code MYPB all day, every day, and save yourself 25%.
Absolutely.
That is it from us. Tune in next week. We will be back, and enjoy the rest of your week.
Waiting on you, Pat.